Aubrey here with DevCentral, coming at you from the AWS Public Sector Symposium in Ottawa. I just got done watching the keynotes and wanted to share some of the thoughts that came out of them. Opening up, we had a couple of announcements from AWS regarding a few new POPs in Canada that will be added on and available for some of the Canadian customers to make use of. In addition to this, they also announced that they are set to be carbon neutral by 2040, 10 years ahead of the Paris Accords. After this, we had Lieutenant Colonel Dave Serapins, who is a digital transformation officer in the Canadian military, and he told a couple of interesting stories about digitizing the battlefield and what that can actually do for other segments of the public. The story that he shared was one where the Canadian Air Force and Army digitally reenacted a battle out west in Alberta. They used all sorts of different technologies, including AWS cloud components, to make this happen and to make it a bit more manageable from a strategic point of view. But the really amazing piece of this is that when they were finished digitizing this battle, they took all of the technology that they had implemented on the battlefield and implemented that fighting forest fires in Quebec. He talked about a number of brave citizen soldiers, as he called them, that went to work fighting these fires immediately after this battle. He shared that the technology that they had used on the battlefield to make their offensives and their defense much more effective and impactful were equally effective in terms of fighting a forest fire that was as widespread as we saw this year in 2023. Next, we heard from Dr. Kumar Chelapila, who is General Manager of AI and ML Services at AWS. He shared that according to a number of economists, generative AI by itself as a technology will increase global GDP by 7% within the next 10 years. Today, the uses are fairly simple, and they include being able to find some answers for tax laws, as well as the aforementioned forest firefighting. In the healthcare segment, which is public segment here in Canada, he talked about doctors using generative AI to get patient summaries so that they could expedite treatment. He also described the differences between some of the classic ML models versus today's foundational models in AI, and talked about how the major difference is that the foundational models take a lot of the setup work away. It used to be that you would have a machine learning project where you would take hours to weeks to months in training models. And now, with a number of foundational models available for easy consumption, I counted 7 on the AWS platform today by myself. There may be more. We have to spend much less time setting these projects up, and more time can be spent at the end in fine-tuning our large language models that are out there. Finally, finishing up, we had Colonel Chris Hadfield. When I mentioned his presence to Boo and asked if he knew who he was, Boo had said every Canadian knows who Chris Hadfield is. Why? Because he was the first commander of the International Space Station to come from Canada. He was also the first Canadian to spacewalk. And what he talked about was the difference between innovation and building. How do we get from one to the next? The easy answer is there are 4 things that we need to keep track of to make sure that we get to that building phase. Number 1, you have to have a vision of victory. What does this look like? Number 2, you need to have the skills to pay the bills, so to speak. 3, you need to be able to communicate effectively within your team. And lastly, celebrate. If you're building with a team, does deserve some celebration so that you can continue to build and want to feel good about innovating. He shared a story that was really rather amazing about a coolant leak that occurred on the space station, whereby he needed to go out in an unplanned spacewalk last second. It was a life or death situation, but he was able to get out there and do the job because he had the skills and they had the communication and there was a vision for victory. Now his celebration was a little bit different. I think it occurred while he was outside in space and the space station went right through the aurora. He showed video footage of when this happened and what that looked like from his perspective. I've never seen another shot like it. So I'd encourage you to seek him out and see if you can't see him speak at a conference sometime soon too, or watch the recap of the AWS Symposium videos. In the closing moments, he encouraged all of us to continue to serve as role models and to try to encourage future generations to continue to innovate and build so that we can overcome some of the challenges that will be coming towards us in the next few years, with concern to feeding what will soon be a 10 million person population on this planet, as well as trying to figure out how to provide power for all of those humans as well. That wraps up the keynotes here at the AWS Public Sector Symposium. I'm Aubrey with DevCentral, and thanks for watching.